Okay, right, we're going to be looking at hard rhythms now. And what I mean by hard rhythms is we're going to play them a little bit more forceful, but we're still going to try and have the groove there. The most important thing we've got to realise is when we play hard, we don't lose any of that feel factor. So a couple of little tricks we can do to enhance that feel factor and transform you in a matter of minutes. If you get on your kits and take note and listen to what's going on, Russell will tell you. Here we go. I'll play the groove first and I'll show you what I mean by it. Now, what I was actually doing there is I'm trying to soften, I'm playing hard, it requires a hard rhythm, I'm softening the right hand. Now, a lot of you out there, what I've noticed with people is the right hand's too dominating, even in a rock rhythm, and you play it like this. What that's doing is overriding the groove. The groove comes from the fat snare drum on the back end of the beat. It's all about the snare drum. We've got to have good beat placement involving the bass drum, obviously, and the right hand. But most of all, we listen to most music, it's all about the backbeat. The backbeat is what everyone's really listening to hold down the groove. Soften the right hand, nice even dynamics between the bass drum and snare drum. If we immediately soften the right hand and play a couple of bars the way you're probably doing it now, and then you're softening it, we get a nice groove. Here we go. Now, obviously, the more rockier we get, we need the hi-hats to open. But what we tend to do is, instead of still keeping it very light, we still keep the bass drum and snare drum very powerful. What we do is we just open the hi-hats and we hit the hi-hats with the right hand a little bit harder, but dynamically still lower than the bass drum and snare drum. So what I'll do is I'll open them, play them the way that you maybe have been playing them, and I'll play them my way to soften them so that you realise that the groove is being taken over by the bass drum and certainly, most importantly, where the snare drum sits. Here we go. Okay, so it's a very subtle approach, but it makes a big difference to the groove. Now, what we can also do with the hi-hat is, depending on our technique, of course, which I shall come to in further lessons, to enhance the technique so that we can spice up the hi-hats and make the hi-hats adding those nice little groovy bits and pieces while not interfering with what the bass drum and snare drum's doing, holding down a nice hard groove. This kind of thing. What I'm going to be doing is basically broken up 16th notes with the right hand. I shall demonstrate it slowly first, and then I will demonstrate it slowly first, and then I'll try it a bit faster. So here we go. Now what I'm doing is, this helps to make it swing along a little bit. So I'll increase the tempo a little bit, I'll play it straight, and then I'll add the broken 16th notes with the right hand, and you'll see how that just starts to make it swing just a little bit more. So what I'm actually trying to do there is add a little bit more of a percussion type of thing to the drum part to help just make it swing a bit more. It helps you as a drummer because the more subdivision type of things that we put in, i.e. ghost notes, which we'll come to in a short while on the snare drum, which I was putting a few in there, you may have seen that, which I can't help it because it's become natural for me. This is what we're trying to do as musicians. We're trying to do all the required techniques that we've got, most of all control over the sticks and the pedals, of course, and then play as fluent as we possibly can so it becomes second nature. So therefore, I went into a few little ghost notes. The right hand, as you saw, that was adding like my little percussion part. From there, still nice and light. And a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4. I was still maintaining that dynamic, that the right hand was a softer volume than the bass drum and snare drum. And when I applied that technique, it didn't put my bass drum placement and my snare drum placement off. I was still able to groove it properly. Obviously, we can do different forms of that 3-note application with the right hand. And if we put an accent in, which would be very similar to the old jazz thing, and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1. Okay, we've got a little dotted note in there just to make it swing a bit more. It's called swinging. And when we swing, we think of triplets: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 and a 1. And what we do is we apply that to that phrase, the right hand signature tune of the jazz player, which I do dabble in that art, even though I may not like it. I do. On the hi-hat, we put that jazz pattern on the hi-hat with a bit more of a stronger accent. We can turn like a hard funk rhythm into a swinging funk rhythm. And believe you me, when you start playing these kind of things, it certainly does tend to make the bass player feel good and the rhythm section feel good. And that's what it's all about. It's those special moments when you play music that makes the music feel the best it possibly can by adding these little bits and pieces just to help the groove along. So bear it in mind, this does require a little bit of a technique. The double stroke, which is very important with the right hand, to make the doubles, the clarity of the beats come out more on the hi-hat. So I'll just demonstrate this slowly first, and then we'll take it up to speed. I'll play it with the 8th notes first, and then I'll put the jazz sticking with the right hand on at a slow speed, and I'll do the same faster. Of course, the last couple of bars there, I was doing some with the little skippy note in and some without, i.e. some straight quarter note and some with the little hiccup there, little hiccup dotted note that we get from the jazz. So here we are, a little bit faster. So as you can hear, again, it's like adding a bit of a percussionist, an upbeat groove, does definitely make it swing and groove a little bit more in that triplet fashion.